And thank you so much for joining us in the middle of the day on a Wednesday. My name is Dr. Sarah Fredman-Ader. I am the Vice President of Israel and Jewish Affairs at the Jewish Community Relations Council of New York. And we are really so honored to be joined today by retired Colonel Miri Eisin. Some of you may have participated in the last briefing Miri did for us about the hostage deal a few months ago, and that was really an incredibly eye-opening and detail-oriented and focused and just incredibly interesting briefing, and we're so happy that she's able to join us today. I have promised her that I would give fair warning. Miri is in Israel, and so if at any point she is interrupted by sirens, then we will, of course, let her go to the safe room as she must do. So we're hoping not only that the next hour is quiet, but that, the future in general is quiet. But I wanted to give that caveat before we began. And just quickly, for those of you who don't know Miri Eisin, she is an internationally recognized expert on intelligence, security, and geopolitical landscape in the Middle East. She's a retired colonel in the Israel Defense Forces. She served over 20 years in a variety of high-profile intelligence and operational roles, including as the foreign media advisor to Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert in 2006. And I've really come to see her as just a trusted guide in this very, very complicated time that we're living in. Miri, just to start very, very broadly, could you provide an assessment as to where we are right now in this conflict? I'm sure everyone on this call is glued to their phones, but can you provide an assessment as to where we are in the conflict, and what are the most important developments we should be watching right now?
So thank you, Sarah, first for inviting me and inviting me again. And for a lot of people who see me and watch me on the different media, the shows that I do, you're not used to seeing, for those who can see, the map behind me. I figured that you could see, Iran, Israel behind me. And it also has to do with the fact that I'm not at home. So I'm going to give an update about what's happening. And I'm going to say that in Israel, it's just after 9 p.m. There was a siren just in around half an hour, 45 minutes ago. And I put that into proportion because I too do not have a safe room at my house. And in this conflict with Iran, I went to stay in a place that has a safe room. And I say that to give context that this is not like other conflicts. This is not the same as the other campaigns. This is not the same as the other 20 months. Israel's aim in that sense is going after what is, we've always kind of called the head of the snake, but in this case, it's the combination of the nuclear and missile capabilities. And both the nuclear and missile capabilities are all under the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. And all of the targets that Israel has been attacking from Friday, June 13th, early morning, with the initial opening attack, but every single day since then, and we're at the end of the 6th day, are all targets that have to do with either Iran's nuclear capability, its evolving nuclear capability, and I'm talking about the military nuclear capability, and it's in a variety of positions. You see the silly map of Iran behind me. I mean, I just put it there in that sense. Iran learned all of the lessons from Israel's preemptive attack against the Osirak nuclear reactor in 1981. Iran learned all of the lessons from Israel's destroying of the North Korean Syrian reactor in Syria in 2007. And Iran, over the last 20 years, has built dozens of different sites so that it's here and it's there and it's all over the place. And what we're doing now is systematically attacking them. Iran was not going to be nuclear tomorrow morning, but you don't attack a nuclear facility that's going to be nuclear tomorrow morning. You can't attack it then. You have to do it before it goes hot. And the whole aspect is that Iran was working on a lot of different ways to arrive at the nuclear material to put into the warhead, to put onto the missile. Let's get to the warhead and the missile. So they don't yet have nuclear. Israel has been attacking in the last 6 days the different sites that both launch the missiles against Israel, and there's the difference between the missile launcher and the missile itself, you have less launchers than missile. Every launcher can launch several times missiles, and Israel is going after the launchers because that immediately limits what they can fire against us. And here you can already see the results. In that first evening, which took them a very long time to respond, but in that first evening, we saw 50 missiles launched at once, and then again 50, and then it went down to 30, and then it went down to 20, and then it went down to 10. That is the accumulative capabilities that we're attacking the different targets, we're attacking the launchers. So we're attacking the nuclear, we're attacking the missiles, and we're attacking all sorts of different elements of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. And I'll remind all of us that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps is a terror-designated group, both by the United States and by the UK and by the EU and by Germany. I mean, it's both the EU is the EU. It is defined as such. It is a terror organization in its definition. Anyways, that's part of the targets in that sense. And that's what we're doing is that opening the strike was to take out capabilities that would really impact the continuation. And here we are 6 days in, and we're attacking nuclear sites, missile sites, drone sites, manufacturing sites, and all of the different commanders of these different Iranian Revolutionary Guard troops, and the fact that they're called this or that, all of the nuclear system is under the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. All of the missiles, all of the drones are under the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. And that's what we're doing very effectively and continue to do. I'll leave it at that for the moment because I think I already gave enough flesh to that idea.
Thank you so much. And I forgot to say this up top. Please put any questions that you have for Miri in the Q&A box, and we'll hopefully have time to get to those as well. We know that Israel is not the only country in the region that is concerned about a nuclear Iran. And yet many of these countries that are concerned about a nuclear Iran have also been very critical of Israel over the past several months, year and a half. What does this current escalation in warfare between Israel and Iran mean for the regional security landscape in the Middle East?
Israel borders Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, and then you have the inner lines of both the Gaza Strip, inner outer line, and Judea and Samaria. And I say that because we don't border, for example, Iraq that borders Iran. We don't have a direct border with Saudi Arabia. But this kind of a conflict, which is a direct conflict, and again, for those who can, and you look at the map behind me as I put my head to the both sides, for Israel to attack in Iran, both in the initial strike and as the campaign goes on, we're flying over other countries. Flying over Syria, are we flying over Jordan? Are we flying over Saudi Arabia? Flying over Iraq? You have to get there. We have air superiority over all of Iran. It's a very large country. It's like, 50 times the size of Israel. It's way, way larger than Israel. And in addition, all of the capabilities that Iran is using against Israel in these 6 days, as they are diminishing, but as they're using them until now, the Islamic regime has fired over 1,000 drones at Israel. So, what's amazing? 0 have hit in Israel. These are suicide drones. They have noses that are made up out of explosives. They have killed Israeli soldiers when they have been fired by Hezbollah, by Shiites in Iraq, by the Houthis. All of these different types are all being supplied to the different proxies. So for the regional in the area, Jordan is in between Iraq and a hard place. It flies over on the one way, it flies over on the way back. And Jordan, in that sense, is actively involved. It's airspace, meaning drones are flying over it. They're going to down the drones. The Jordanian military said just in the last 2 days that they've even downed a missile, which is much more difficult in the technology and the way that you can do that. The countries that are closer to, I should do it from that side, right? That are closer to Iran, meaning Saudi Arabia and all of the different Gulf countries. And in this case, it's especially the ones that have relations with Israel, like Bahrain and the Emirates, but it's also, for that matter, Kuwait or Qatar or Oman. They're all the ones that are on that northern side of the Arabian Peninsula facing Iran. They're all worried that they are going to be directly attacked. I can't tell you that they shouldn't be worried. I know that until now, for the last 6 days, this has been about Israel attacking Iran's capabilities and Iran both in reacting and trying to attack civilian community all over Israel and it going over their heads. But this is something that's happened before. Iran has attacked Saudi Arabia with swarms of drones. All of the different as has happened in the Emirates, so that they're worried that either Iran would directly or through proxies try to attack them more. These are things that need to be taken into account. You can't ignore it. Having said all of that, assuming that we continue, assuming that we get this aim of completely degrading these capabilities that Iran has built over so long, that changes the Middle East equation because everybody was scared of the Islamic regime bogey. And now it's being shown not as hollow. Okay, I'm in Israel. Okay, those half a ton cruise missiles, the ballistic missiles that arrived in Israel over this last week, not only killed 24 people, they've destroyed areas that anybody who's been here would go, okay, this isn't a happy. As I said, I'm at a place with a safe room. It is dangerous otherwise. But so it's not a hollow threat, but it's being showed that we are taking care of that, and that's going to change all of the dynamics within the Middle East. It's going to change Saudi Arabia and all of the Gulf countries. It's going to change Iraq to a large degree. Syria already changed so drastically, and I don't yet know to say what it will change to. But I think we all need to be aware we're looking at something new. That doesn't mean that I know what the next step is going to be.
It's also going to change all of Iran's proxies that rely on Iranian superiority, whether that's Hezbollah or Hamas. And I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to that. We know that Hezbollah has said that they're not going to join in the fight. It's probably because they're unable to, and that the Houthis have said that they will. How do you think what's happening now in Iran, the degradation of their power, is going to affect all of their proxies?
So I love the question, and the fact that I'm smiling is not because I'm happy, it's because I'm Israeli and I'm cynical. So here we are 6 days into these Iranian, as I said, these are ballistic missiles. They're coming in at an enormous speed because they go out into the atmosphere and back down in. They have warheads of half a ton of explosives. And suddenly the Houthi missiles that kept us awake at night were like, yeah, because the day before yesterday, there was a siren. And then they said it's a siren from the Houthis. And it was like, oh, the Houthis, like, but that's just our sense of humor. We went to the safe rooms, but you feel much safer because of just the destruction of what the Iranian missiles have done. So Iran was already in a point of weakness after Israel so degraded Hezbollah. When Israel could make the decision to go and attack on June 13th, part of that decision, which has to do with operational capability and with intelligence and what you think is going on, that's one side of it. The other side of it is that Israel knew, not to the degree that we know today, I say we're already 6 days into it, but knew before June 13th that when we attack, what Iran had always seen as its defense against Israel attacking their nuclear facilities on Iranian soil was that Hezbollah would attack us. Sarah, they had 150,000 rockets. And there's a huge difference in the response. Even though I'm talking about these half a ton horrific Iranian missiles that are no fun here, and I'm being semi-sarcastic and I shouldn't be, but it would have been way worse because we have 7 to 8 minutes before those missiles get here. And if Hezbollah still had drones, swarms of them, rockets, missiles, mortars, and they would be firing 1,000 or 1,500 or 5,000 projectiles at the same time, it would have overwhelmed our interceptor capability. It's with a very short time so that people would have been caught without that early warning. And then in would have come the heavy duty Iranian missiles. And that has changed completely. We degraded Hezbollah to a degree that even I, in that sense, when we started the attack on June 13th, I was like, okay, now Hezbollah is going to show what they have left. Nothing. Bubkas, what I'm on to think now of all of the Yiddish words I don't know, right? But because nothing, that it's like that goes to show that capability that we had against Hezbollah when we degraded it has been very effective. And the Houthis have fired, but very singularly. And I think that what I'm worried about right now is more about the terror actions, meaning they're not managing to use the platforms, the missiles, the rockets, the drones that they supplied to the Houthis, to Hezbollah, to the Shiites in Iraq. And I worry about the additional type of capabilities, which is to do terror attacks worldwide, for example, which is something that they've also prepared themselves for. Last point about the proxies. I didn't mention Hamas. As I said, Hezbollah right now is just sitting it out. Syria changed into a different regime. They're actually trying, they like wave at the missiles and drones overhead. They take photographs of them. They're not doing anything to stop in any direction. And the new regime, which doesn't like us, okay, it does not like Israel, but it hates, detests the Islamic regime in Iran. So it's not allowing Iran to resupply via them. It's not allowing Iran to have bases inside Syria. Iraq is going to be very unstable. Iraq is a very challenging country. It is vehemently, anti-Israel. It's very proud of the fact that it's never had any kind of connection. And that border, which again is kind of behind my head, between Iran and Iraq, that's a more porous border. And I kind of worry there of something ground coming in. But in general, the proxies themselves are not getting supplies, are seeing that their benefactor is not there to help them. And the benefactor, the head of the snake, in that sense, as we always said, octopus, snake, whichever way you wanted to look at it, that its capabilities are absolutely vulnerable. So we have Hezbollah being completely degraded by us. We have Iran now. We've attacked the Houthis in Yemen, not as effectively. And I say sadly, last not least, okay, but that with Hamas, it is a different kind of challenge and we're not managing to handle it in the same way. I do want to say that showing Hamas what we've done to Iran weakens Hamas, but that doesn't mean that we still know what to do with over 2 million people, civilians, together with our 55 hostages. It just makes it very, very difficult, and still is like that, but it does weaken them a bit.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll get to the hostages in a little bit, but I wanted to ask you now to look into the crystal ball. What do you think we're looking at? Is this going to be a prolonged war? Is this going to end? Is there a chance for a diplomatic solution or a de-escalation in the near future? What do you think is going to happen next?
So I love looking in my crystal ball, and my birth name is Miriam, so that makes me a prophetess, doesn't it? And I want everybody to take this with a grain of salt, but when I say with a grain of salt, at the end we all need to make predictions because otherwise we can't plan. And that means that I need to look at what the Israeli Defense Forces, the Israeli Air Force, the intelligence community, the Mossad, all of these security forces, what they're doing. That I know how to predict better. And I state that we have absolute, I don't like the word absolute, we have very strong air superiority over Iran. It means that we can fly to Iran and back and use our capabilities to target the nuclear sites, the missile sites, the drone sites, to target the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, both the top personnel, but also all of the different capabilities that they've built. That doesn't do regime change, but what it does is it brings about a different reality in Iran, and especially a different reality for the entire region that sees that Iran cannot do that. So that doesn't explain what I see in my crystal ball. I think that we will continue, as long as the world will let us, to degrade the different sites, to do more damage to the nuclear sites. That's like top priority, but it's also doing heavy damage, not just to the missiles and the launchers and the drones, but to the missile and drone factories, to the know-how, to where they develop them. I'll remind you all that Iran exports drones to nothing less than Russia, and Russia uses Iranian suicide drones extensively against Ukraine. I mean, it's like this crazy world that we're in. I look into my crystal ball. This won't go on, I think, more than a few weeks or less. And I say that because the instability that happens with the raising of oil prices, that immediately impacts Japan and China. It can impact Turkey. Russia has its, I'm just saying in that sense, it isn't just about us. When you do something like this, it completely disrupts everything that's coming out of the Persian Gulf. And that immediately impacts the world, and the world comes in. And I want you all to take notice that until now, with all of our criticism of the world and the criticism of the world against us over our very challenging fight against Hamas in the Gaza Strip, that at the end, they haven't told us stop right now, not any of the allies. And everybody wants to step in. About diplomacy, there's always diplomacy. Diplomacy is always there. I think that people always think that it's like either or. Right now, behind the scenes, that diplomacy is one where how do you get out of it? Doesn't mean, the last thing I'm going to try to do in my crystal ball is to tell you what President Trump will do next. But and I don't think any crystal ball can predict that one there. And I say that in the sense that he has said total surrender. He, in his I never know how to call his social media channel, but in his social media channel, he is in the last 24, 48 hours put out total surrender, absolute surrender. I don't care. And that's from the United States of America. The United States of America, the UK, and some of the other smaller European countries have transferred a lot of hardware out of the immediate vicinity of where they could be attacked by Iran, but into the perimeter where they would be able to attack Iran. So a lot is going on right now. I don't expect the US to step in. I actually don't. I think I'm one of the Israelis who thinks differently. There are lots of Israelis who think that the US will join. I don't. But I do think that right now in my crystal ball, I see us continuing to degrade. And I would say that we will get to a stage that we feel we've really made a difference when we get through 24 hours without a missile firing. That doesn't mean that they can't fire missiles. It just means that no matter what we get to, I promise everybody that right before whatever ceasefire we get to, Iran will fire a missile because they have to do that as part of saving face. It's similar to Hamas, similar to Hezbollah, that they always have to show at the end, see, we had capability and we're doing the ceasefire not because we're weak. That's my crystal ball.
The question of U.S. involvement is one that we are all thinking about because there seem to be no clear signs. Before the attack, the initial attack on Thursday, the U.S. was very emphatic that Israel could not attack, and I think most people, almost everyone, was very surprised. And at first, the U.S. claimed no involvement, and now, as you said, President Trump is saying things like total surrender. He's saying we have total control of the airspace. And I think that there's the question of what does it mean if the US does get involved and what does it mean if it doesn't? Can the total destruction of Iranian nuclear facilities be done without US intervention?
Okay,
and what other roles might the US be playing?
Okay, so I'll step into this in the following way. Right now, the United States is not militarily involved. This is an Israeli operation, as the US said, not us. And also that has to do with your own, at that stage, waiting for that Iranian retaliation, because Iran very often can immediately retaliate against, I'm going to call you for a moment, the big devil, because I'll remind you that at the end, we're the little devil and the United States is the big devil. Having said that, Khamenei has always been much more focused on us, the Zionist entity, the cancer tumor that needs to be erased from the world, more than a focus on the big devil, the United States. That's been part of his own balance in what he does, in both with the proxies and through a very ideological side. So the United States is not involved militarily. Not being involved militarily doesn't mean that you're standing around static. You have to protect your forces. You have to make sure that you're not caught by surprise. There are those proxies. The proxies could attack US bases or facilities so that you're always going to be on alert. That's not participating. That's called good military sense. Having said all of that, there is a possibility the US will join in, and that would be, I think, only against the nuclear facilities, only against the ones that are very hard to attack with equipment that the United States has, but Israel does not have. And that could be a possibility that they'll specifically, because the president has said consistently that this is about the nuclear. So I don't think that they would participate in the aspects that we have been doing and stating as part of our goals, which is the whole missile drone complex and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. And if they participate in the nuclear, that can be 1, 2, 3. It isn't something very prolonged. That's coming with a very different type of heavy duty hardware. If the United States does not participate, Israel is still making very heavy inroads into the nuclear facilities that exist. I'll put it in these terms. You know how if you hit on something, at the end there's an erosion. And even if we don't have the heavy duty kind of capabilities that the United States has, we still are attacking them day in, day out, several times a day. You do it from here and you do it from there. Last but not least, I always want to remind all of us with the Israeli capabilities that we've shown over these last 6 days, and these are things that don't grow on the day that you start them, okay? They're perhaps harvested or presented a bit more. And there's no question whatsoever that Israel has capabilities on the ground in Iran. And that means that you can go at the nuclear facilities not only from the air heavy duty, maybe you can do it in an additional way, and that the different air superiority that we have that enables us to really do a lot of things all over Iran as we want them could also enable us to do something, not because it's smarter or better, but because we have to do it on our own. It would be more dangerous, but it is a possibility that's there. So in my crystal ball, if I didn't say that before, we're going to continue to degrade the nuclear capabilities. And if the United States comes in, it would just be much more quick and degraded. It would be the combination of both.
How important is Ayatollah Khamenei in this sense of victory? As you mentioned, we've taken out almost the entire leadership of the Revolutionary Guard, as well as many of the most important scientists working in the nuclear facilities. We can imagine that the Ayatollah is not himself getting his hands dirty building the bombs. So what does it mean when we're talking about, there's been lots of talk about assassination or not to assassinate him?
It's a wonderful question, and I want to be clear. He's been the religious supreme leader for 35 years. I think that both in the United States, because Khomeini was the one who did the revolution, because Khomeini was the one who came back from France, and then you had the US, the workers. I mean, when the Iranian students took the US officials hostage for 444 days in 1979, 1980, I take us back in that sense to that time period that we see Khomeini. But what can I tell you? For 35 years, Khamenei is the supreme leader. Khamenei is the one that has been leading through that system that I said, the nuclear and the Iranian, it's all under the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and the air and space. He's the one who calls the shots, but it's not just calling the shots, it's the ideology. So first of all, it is him. Having said that, every person has a replacement, and the man is 88 years old, okay? He was going to die anyways. You can take him out. You just made him a martyr and they'll appoint somebody else instead. Right now, there's no question that he's very influential. And I think that he's already going to be looking, again, it's a religious leader. It's supposed to be, it's not the same system as like when the Pope died and we now got a new US born Pope or whatever, it's different, but it is a lot of men of the Shura, because it's only men who come in and actually are the ones who decide on who the next religious leader would be. It isn't that he says who it will be. He's supposed to kind of give the idea that you understand who he thinks would be best. But at the end, he doesn't choose. And the question is, would it go to a hardliner or not to? And in that sense, the Vatican and the Pope don't do to the world what they used to do. Once upon a time, they made people go on crusades, right? That was the Pope and the Vatican. The Islamic regime is led by Khamenei. Taking him out changes that stage, and you don't know what you're going to get afterwards. On a personal level, I can say I don't think we can get anything worse. I really don't. I said the same thing about Hassan Nasrallah, but with Hassan Nasrallah, taking him out changed the organization completely. The Islamic regime of Iran has had 45 years of control, not controlling, they were a revolution. They were what the people took over at the time. It wasn't an outside force, non-Persian, who took over the Persian-speaking country called Iran. It was a Persian-speaking or desire. Certainly half the population in the Islamic regime support the Islamic regime. So yeah, half doesn't. It's a horrific one as far as I'm concerned. But because of that, taking out Khamenei will definitely have an impact, but it doesn't change the regime. Let's be clear. That regime is the one that holds all of the capabilities of the state. It's the one that does all the different things that I talked about. And we're trying to destroy those from within, not the other elements of government, but the ones that do all of the harsh export of the different capabilities.
You just mentioned that I think you said about half of the people in Iran support the regime. We've heard many times about the lack of support, and how this is a country where brave women are taking to the streets and uncovering their hair or trying to take back other sorts of more modern liberties. Do you think that there might be a hunger at this time, while the government is at a weaker point, for the people to demand a new form of leadership?
I love the question, Sarah, and I always feel that when we look at it, we're looking at it from our wonderful Western liberal ideals. This is a country where women cannot go out except in a burqa, right? Okay, I mean, maybe not the same burqa that you have with the Taliban in Afghanistan right now, but clothes on in that sense. And those brave young women are then arrested and put in jail and beaten to death. And in 2009, brave young women and other people tried to do something. And it's very hard to do so in such a harsh dictatorship. But it's not just the harsh religious dictatorship. I think that it's kind of, I'm giving a horrible comparison, but I want people to understand it. That there's a big difference between the avant-garde Tehran, which was a very cosmopolitan city for many, many years, and then between other cities that are much more, I would call it in its Shiite terms, but conservative and liberal. And there are conservatives and there are liberals. And the same thing, by the way, is true in Turkey, where Turkey is going on a path to becoming much more religiously conservative. And they're not at the stage of the Islamic regime, but they're in a different path that's kind of similar to that. And in Turkey, you go, where are all the Turks? How are they not pushing back against Erdogan, who wants to have much more Sharia law in day-to-day life in Turkey? And Turkey was almost a democracy, really. It isn't easy to do a revolution. I don't think you can do it from the outside. I love that for the Persian people, but I don't think that you and me define to the Persian people what they want. And I asked that question because in the rural areas and in lots of cities and lots of they very much accept a lot of the aspects of the Islamic regime. They may not like portions that have to do with women. They may not like other things, but they don't say no to it all. And again, I don't have a better answer than that. I can hope. I'll even say that there was a year, I don't know, I think it was in 2017, 2018, where everybody thought that Israel was about to attack Iran. And then there was a whole campaign in Israel that said, Israelis love Iranians and Iranians love Israelis. And it was like Iran and Israel, because this isn't about the people at all. And in that sense, this regime, this Islamic regime, has very clearly been building enormous capabilities that they both have and exported. And one of the main focuses, not the only one, but one of the main focuses under Khamenei has been, and I know I'm saying this in a horrible way, certainly if people are just stepping in right now, and Miri being sarcastic, but that's me, the illegal Zionist entity that's a cancerous tumor in the world. That's how he calls us. Now, this isn't something, okay, like for the fun of it, I follow him on X. Okay, he's Twitter, he's on X. And read it. First of all, he tweets, he does in Hebrew and in English. And maybe he's not Donald, maybe he doesn't do it on his own, because with Donald Trump, I really do think that the president does it on his own. But you got to look at it. It's very much what he says. And the main focus there is on our annihilation destruction. And I don't see how the people of Iran right now are going to be able to overthrow that. I wish it for them.
Thank you. And the reason we keep asking you back is because of your sarcastic, cynical views. So I hope you know that we all appreciate it very much. Shifting focus a little bit, how is this conflict going to affect the ongoing war in Gaza and the strategic focus and military resources that are needed there? I know we've lost several soldiers this week. So how will this war affect what is going on there?
So first of all, it's still going on, including today. A soldier from the paratroopers was killed by a sniper in the Gaza Strip. So we're definitely still at war against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. 55 hostages, hopefully 20 alive. And you can ask about how the last 6 days in that sense have impacted them. And I'm like, well, the last 620 some days, just add the accumulation. It weakens Hamas's leaders. That's a good thing. Why does it weaken them? Because the bulk of outside Hamas, which are the ones that do the negotiations, are based both in Tehran and in Qatar. And when Iran is weaker, that weakens them. Okay, that's part of their backing and that weakens them. Having said that, the IDF have right now in the ground campaign that they started already almost a month and a half ago, where we continued the ground campaign. We have 4 full divisions with a large amount of troops that are doing the harsh, systematic. It's not door to door. Door to door sounds nice. It's kind of like a salesman. You're going to find the opening into shafts, the entrance into this underground subterranean, blowing it up 50 meters by 150 yards by 100 yards, another 100 yards, and then somebody's killed because they pop out of some other place. And it turns the Hamas into much more, for Hamas in defense, what they're going to call guerrilla fighting, because they're fighting against soldiers that are in there. That's their targets. They don't have to target civilians anymore. They're targeting the soldiers themselves. That gives them that capacity. The only way in that sense is both, I don't object completely to the military pressure. We shouldn't allow Hamas to be defining the rules of the game, and us doing military pressure on them, I'm fine with that. Having said that, there's oh so much you can do with military pressure, and to get the hostages out, you have to negotiate. And we have. There's Egypt and there's Qatar. Neither one of them are perfect. There's the United States. Witkoff was part of that as well. And I'm just saying in that sense, all in any way about it, for Hamas, who are in survival mode, it was never easy. It's not any easier now. But in the worst way, as long as they don't get back the hostages and as long as the negotiations do continue, they're fine because they're still around. What they're worried about is when negotiations arrive at a stage that they're looking at their own survival. So to be clear to everybody, it's no easier than it was before. And I'm going to say something that most people maybe, I don't want to say surprised by, it's no harder because of the campaign against Iran. And I think that the campaign itself impacts Hamas as well. And having said all of that, the war against Hamas in the Gaza Strip is a horrific, ugly war. I don't think there is any pretty war. Even this campaign against Iran, which is an amazingly targeted, pinpointed, and against very military targets, and war is war. I think it's horrible right now for civilians in Iran, and we've killed civilians. We haven't targeted any, but we've been targeting. But as I say, war is horrible, and the one in the Gaza Strip is the worst kind.
You've mentioned the hostages several times, and I just want to give you a little bit of time to speak more about that, whether this escalation has any effect on efforts to secure hostages, to secure the release of hostages, whether the Hostage Family Forum, I know that they've been pushing a campaign to not forget about the hostages as people's heads are turned toward Iran. So could you tell us a little bit more about what's going on there?
I'm going to tell you about it, and I'm also going to be talking in that sense as Miri sitting in Tel Aviv. And my heart is with 55 hostages, with 20 that I need to come home alive, and another 35 that I need to bury here. For the last 6 days in the state of Israel, it's hard to think of hostages. The sirens, the early warnings, the sleepless nights, not because it's a sense, okay, it's just like, and we need to that this is not something easy, and today in that sense has been the easiest because the amount of missiles has gone down. And I say that so that you realize where we are. These last 6 days were not similar to any of the 20 months before that. This is different. And I'm in Tel Aviv, and I'm in between. I mean, my house is right next to one of the places that was hit yesterday. I'm in Tel Aviv, right next to some of the places that have been hit in the last week. It's like you go around, and it's not a question of close to home, but it's a sense of who we are. So first of all, I'm with the hostages, and I don't think that those that take care of the hostages inside the IDF, inside the Prime Minister's office, they're still doing the things that have to do with the hostages. The question in this case is who right now is the negotiator? The only way they can get back at the end is if somebody talks to the other side to bring them out alive. That means negotiations. Okay, we're not going to get to the 20 live hostages by military capabilities. They say, sadly, if you want to get to those 20 by military, you get to 20 dead bodies. Okay, it doesn't work that way. That it's already the 20 that are the close core that they'd much rather execute them than allow us to get to them alive. So that you need to do it through negotiations, and those negotiations are through the only channels that we have now, the Egyptian, the Qatari, and the United States. It's the ones that we've always had, and they're still open. And I say that because I think that right now, in its own way, part of the way out of this, all of these different things, I say way out, you asked like, so what's the end game? Is that I do see these as being interconnected. And I do think that it brings about the possibility. I've always been one of the ones who's been much more, I'll use the term somber, every single time they talked about hostage release, because I look at it through the eyes of Hamas, not because I'm a terrorist, but it's always fun when you're the counterterrorism person and I'm the one who's supposed to represent the terrorist. And I'm like, because at the end, and I don't think like them. Okay. I don't think of myself as a murderous, barbaric, whatever, but I look at it through their eyes. And right now, in that sense, they have more pressure on them, both because of our military pressure and because Iran is so weak. And that means that Qatar and Egypt, United States doesn't have any way to pressure Hamas. They are, in that sense, a go-between. But Qatar can pressure Hamas because most of the outside leadership sits there. And Egypt could totally pressure Hamas because they border the Gaza Strip and they are the main contender in that sense. And between those, I'm going to hope that we get better. I think that we need to breathe in deep, and that perhaps what we'll see in the next week, 2, 3, surprisingly, is not only changes in the Iranian arena, but also hostage return in that arena. I don't expect it to be all 55, but I'm one of those who says, because of Hamas, so bring back whoever you can. But that's me. I'm not, and I completely respect and understand people who think that we should do it otherwise, but I have a different opinion on that one.
Thank you. I have one final question on my part, but I want to encourage our participants. If you do have a question for Miri, please put it in the Q&A box, and we'll be happy to ask that as well. From your perspective, how should the Jewish community and supporters of Israel understand this moment in history? What's the big picture we should be keeping in mind as the situation unfolds?
It's a wonderful question. So I'm going to answer in 2 different parts. One, this doesn't erase October 7th. This doesn't erase the war in the Gaza Strip. But let's be clear. In the aftermath of that, Israel against Hezbollah changed the Middle East by what happened in Syria. And what Israel is doing now in this campaign against this horrific terror exporting regime of Iran, we've exposed it in that sense. We're contending with something that was not just threatening Israel, but it was threatening us directly. That is an amazing stage to be in. Because of the 55 hostages, because of the 20 months of war, it's hard to appreciate that right now, but we need to look forward. I do really think that in that sense, it's something that we can, I want to even say enjoy, even though I know that that's not the right word, but we're going to get there. And to be able to make a better point on what I mean in that sense of looking forward, and I'm just looking for my notes because I wrote this down the other day, and I really strongly believe in this. The other thing I think we need to take as the Jewish communities we're looking also on and out is about our own resilience. And this resilience is on both sides of the ocean. So we have the resilience that we need right now, because as I said, the last 6 days, I migrated from my house. That goes to say a lot, okay? And I also want to say for those who may ask that sadly, it's true that the Arab citizens of Israel have less bomb shelters and safe places, but I don't have a bomb shelter or a safe place in my house either. And I go to a school. I'm just saying in that sense, it isn't something that's just there, okay? It's a challenge inside Israel. Around half the people, 40%, don't have safe rooms, and I'm part of that 40%. But when it comes to the resilience on both sides, the last 20 months have been impossible for us here. Oh my God, for what they've been overseas for Jews in the United States, your whole lives has changed. Okay. So in the terms of resilience, The academic way of looking at this, Sarah, is that resilience includes 4 elements. The first is to absorb, and I think that we always look only at the absorb. Here we are absorbing, okay, oh my God. The second part is about adapting, and I can certainly say that that's a strength that Israelis have. And I think that we Jews are very good at absorbing. We understand that. That's why we survive, but we also know how to adapt. And we've changed, we've morphed. Here we are 3,000 years later, right? Okay, we know how to do that. But the next 2 stages of resilience are to recover. And the beautiful part about that is that if you've managed to absorb and then adapt, and then you can recover, after that you thrive. So yes, we're in very challenging times. And yet I look and I say that our resilience is not just about absorbing. It's not just our being here and we can get through this. We're adapting. And we're going to recover. And after that, we'll thrive. And I say that because I really do think that on both sides of the ocean, we need a lot of resilience. This isn't you supporting us. It's a two-way street. What has happened here has changed the reality for Jews everywhere around the world. We all need to understand how we get through this together.
The resiliency of the Israeli people is so incredible. I'm talking to I live in America, but my whole family is in Israel, and I speak to my parents and my brothers and my grandmother, my nieces and nephews, and I ask them constantly checking in, how are you? We're fine. We took a walk. We bought some groceries. I'm in my garden. And I'm
You
thinking,
should
here in
see the
America,
memes.
we're
Well, really,
suffering.
you should see the memes going on in Israel right now, because it's just like we have really good senses of humor with everything going on.
Absolutely.
Because it's like Moses with his as you see Sinai behind me also, okay? It's like Moses going, let my people sleep. I mean, we're all semi-zombie sleepless. You know how LinkedIn does hiring, those little
Mhm.
things. So there's one with Khamenei hiring. It's just like at the end we have a very good sense of humor, and that's part of what we do. It really does make a difference, but that's specifically when it comes to there. I think that all of us have much less of a sense of humor and a sense of capability when it comes to what's happening in the Gaza Strip with the hostages, because there is no easy, there certainly is no win-win. There's no win-win, and you don't like being in situations of no win-win, and it isn't a clear-cut win-loss, and it just feels very tragic and harsh.
Thank you so much, retired Colonel Miri Eisen, for taking the time. I'm really glad that things have been quiet. Hopefully, we are in that 24-hour period where we know that it's about to end. And I wish you a uninterrupted night of sleep. And thank you
That would be nice.
so much for taking the time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and I really hope that we should all look at a better time. We're getting there, and again, we went, remember, 50 missiles, 40, 30, 10, 5. We're in the right direction.
Thank you. And thank you everyone who joined us today. If you have any additional questions, we'll be happy to share them. We're going to be putting this recording up as well. And Miri, I hope we can call you the next time there's something to
You
update
know
us on.
me, I'm always there for you, Sarah. So Laila Tov to everybody, and stay
All right,
safe.
so thank you.